those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike Biddle and I'm from the Technology Strategy Board. I lead our assisted living innovation platform. I also wear another hat. It's not a particularly gold braided hat, but it might sound it. So I'm also the president of the Ambient Assisted Living Association. So picking up on David's point about international side of things, we've actually got 23 countries working together in that partnership. And I'll say a little bit more about that, but not a lot. So if you've not heard of us, we're the UK Innovation Agency. We get our money from the Department for Business, Innovation and Skills. So your taxpayer money in the UK goes to the Treasury, they kindly give that to Biz, they kindly give some of that to us. This year our budget's about £390 million. And what we're trying to do is invest in innovation for the future. So when we talk about rebalancing the economy, changing the way that we do things and moving to a sort of manufacturing and innovation driven economy, that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're very much about supporting business. We do also fund universities. We do also fund third sector organisations. We do also fund research and technology organisations, but principally we're trying to reach business. And some recent work we've done found that about 50% of our funding actually goes to SMEs. So it's not just about funding the big boys, we're actually trying to get the whole ecosystem working together. So that's also pre-startups as well as the large corporates. And what we're really interested in is those growth sectors of tomorrow. So we talk about maintain, grow and nurture. So let's not lose the fact that we've got excellence in certain areas, you know, like the aerospace industry, like the biomedical sort of life sciences area, like automotive. But then where are we also going to grow and nurture those businesses of tomorrow? So digital or wherever that may be. So we are a funding body, but we do a lot more than that. We talk about this space very much as challenge, and this is a study from Europe looking at the economic impact of ageing. Costs of long-term care more than doubling over the next 50 years or so. I'm not going to preach to you all the stats about the fact that we have a demographic shift. I'm sure most of you are aware of that. But the bit that we're interested in actually is the fact that there's a commercial opportunity. So 50 plus, and whether we like it or not, Department of Health, once you hit 50, they consider you to be old. That's not me. If I'm breaking that, if I'm breaking that news to you, I apologise, but that's not my rule. But over 50 spent £276 billion in 2008, which is about 44% of UK family spending. So it's actually quite a vibrant market in itself. But if you look at market research agencies, they actually sort of lump, normally over 55s is where they look, and they kind of lump anyone over 55 altogether. Whereas we actually would consider children, teenagers, 20-somethings, 30-somethings, they kind of target those, whereas we've been missing that opportunity, I think, and there's a commercial opportunity there. So we think rather than Houston, we have a problem, Houston, we have an opportunity. Part of the reason for that, it's actually a picture of Apollo 11, so, you know, with due recourse to Neil Armstrong passing recently. But the reason that's a picture of Apollo 11, there isn't actually a picture of Apollo 13, where they said, Houston, we have a problem. But interestingly, baby boomers, 1946 to 1964, commonly accepted as that was the period of the baby boomers. So everyone was on the planet by the time that actually took off to go to the moon. So how do you turn that challenge into an opportunity? Well, we think we actually need to flip it round and start to think about it as an increase in human capital. So we've got an increase in labour resource, knowledge resource, social resource. Just because you hit a certain age that you then maybe retire doesn't mean you don't have something to give back to the society. And it's great now that we don't have forced retirement at 65, because actually you don't flip a switch overnight and go from being a qualified aerospace engineer or a qualified doctor or a skilled technician to the next day being a burden on the state. It doesn't work like that. And we need to recognise that people are actually important and that they will actually, if we can keep them healthy and connected with society, then they'll actually be delivering benefit back to society as well as improving their own health and well-being. So we think that the way that we can kind of do some of that is around meeting the demand for independent living, which will improve quality of life. We think that that's going to be done through innovation and technology, not just one of those. They need to work together. And it's as much about system change as it is about a magic widget that you might put on your arm. And that will open new markets and opportunities. I'm going to skip through this, but The Assisted Living Innovation Platform was us trying to stimulate things in a connected way. So not just single bursts of activity, but a sustained program, which we've been doing over the past 5 years. We're about to start thinking about how we refresh that for the future. That's one of my jobs for the next 6 months or so. But it's actually not just about our money either. So the Technology Strategy Board, we've been putting £50 million over 5 years, so nominally 10 million a year. But we've also been bringing in connected funding from the research councils, from Scotland, it was one of the devolved administrations, from AAL, which is actually bringing in European funds. Because it's not just about our money, it's about connecting that funding landscape so that people approaching this new area can actually start to see things in a joined up way. I'm not saying it's perfect, but hopefully it's a bit better than it was when we started. When we did start, we started from the technology end back in 2007, 2008. How do you make devices, systems, home hubs work better in the home and actually be technologies and services that people want? How do you make them work out and about? But ultimately, and a lot of us will probably be talking about that still through the rest of the day, I would imagine, it's actually about the business models and whether people actually want these systems and services and technologies, and how do you put those together. And we've got a range of studies that are looking at some of that, trying to draw out some of the common lessons. But ultimately, we're all humans and we're a tricky beast sometimes, you know, so what we should do isn't necessarily what we do. We all know that if we eat less than 5 a day and all that sort of stuff, and we also know about obesity and the links to type 2 diabetes, but even then we'll still treat ourselves and we won't necessarily look after ourselves in the best way that we could. So there's actually this sort of human-centered design thinking that we need to bring in. So we did a range of projects looking at that, and social and service innovation around that in conjunction with the Design Council. And then we mentioned Dallas as well, so delivering assisted living lifestyles at scale. How do you take all of that stuff, bring it together in a way that can actually be exploited and then be used, and not just be another pilot, but actually be a point of change, again, that will leave a legacy, that word again. And I mentioned ambient assisted living. That's a joint program. It's had 5 funding calls since 2008. And the 6th one is planned for next January. I can't say what it is yet because it will be announced next, 2 weeks' time in Eindhoven. So if you want to get it hot off the press, the AAL Forum is in Eindhoven starting Monday the 24th of September. I do know what it is, I just can't say what it is yet. But I think it will be interesting actually. It's a space that we haven't done anything in before, so hopefully that will be interesting. So here's a couple of examples of stuff that has resulted from work we funded. This was one up in Yorkshire looking at type 2 diabetes. How could you take a high-end video conferencing system that was actually being used for telemedicine to connect a hospital and a prison, so you didn't have to move the prisoners around? How could you take some of the learnings from that? What are the embedded systems? What are the protocols? And what's the hardware and the user interface that you'd need to have that work in your home, so that it becomes a set-top box? So instead of being something that's away, it's actually something that you can actually access from your front room and to connect to the GP. I'm sure we'll make these slides available. That bit.ly link there, if you click on it, actually goes to a file which has got all of the projects that we funded. It's about 48 meg, so beware when you click that button depending on the speed of your connection. What we can do from there is give you any more information if you would like so. I mentioned the social innovation side and the Independence Matters project. The Amazings was one of those that we funded. And what that was doing is not about technology at all, but it's about starting to say, older adults, what are the special what are you amazing at? So wouldn't it be nice to do something for the first time, that you've never tried before? And using those older adults as a resource to share skills, share knowledge with people in the community. And there's things going on in Hackney now as a result of this project, foraging, learning to crochet, and there's actually something that we're all a bit amazing at, and it's not necessarily our day job. And what we're trying to do is connect those older adults with the community. They take a bit of money from that, which many of them actually give to charity, But the service innovation is around how do you make those connections in the first place in the referral schemes. And they're trying to go national with this. So there's actually something about trying to refer an amazing. They're trying to find the next amazing part of the UK outside of Hackney. So if you go to their website, you can make a bid for Aylesbury, maybe, or something like that. I also mentioned Dallas. Ended up being a £37 million programme, which was just under 20 million from us. It's resulted in 4 communities that are working now to actually reach 169,000 people by summer of 2015. So we've got Feel Good Factory in Liverpool, iFocus project, which is warm neighbourhoods working with British Gas, so that could actually go national. Living It Up in Scotland, which is 5 regions of Scotland, and then Year Zero, which have really got a world domination scheme. They're starting in Liverpool, Moray, Rotherham and Rugby, but they're also looking at if that works, they'll go national as well. And what this was about trying to put not just technology, but put the service innovation, connect the public, private and third sector together. And we did put them through the mill a bit, and some of the people in the room were part of that process. But many of them have said on the back of that, they've got to a place that they wouldn't have done without that competition. We said that from the very beginning we're going to run an evaluation for this. We're not doing a randomised controlled trial because the whole system demonstrator's done that, and I'll refer to that briefly. But we're interested in benefit for the individual, so how does it make your life better, my life better? Benefit for the system, because what we currently do doesn't scale to cover the demographic shift that we have. But then the bit that we're really interested in is benefit for the economy. So make no bones about it, we're kind of like baseless capitalists maybe. But you know, as well as trying to make people better and make their lives better and make the system more sustainable, we also want to grow UK businesses, promote UK research and development, create UK wealth. So is this scheme going to do that? So there's things in train to help look at that, being led by the University of Glasgow as it happens. We then said that anything that goes forward must address a lifestyles aspect. And I'm not going to go through all that in detail, but how do you give choice, control, connectedness to an individual so that it's not something being done to you, it's a service that is actually meeting your wants, needs and desires. And then we also talked about interoperability. So how do we move past the fact that some of these technologies don't work together, not necessarily just at the data level, but also at the information level, potentially at the semantic level. And that was one of the things through this process, having different people from different sectors working together, using different words for the same thing, and trying to break down some of those barriers. So one of the projects that was funded was called iFocus, which is being led by ADI, which is this Advanced Digital Institute up in Yorkshire. And one of the things that came out of the process was this infinity model for how things might develop in the future. So at the moment we've kind of got a public service which is based on, you know, your health record, maybe potentially a social care record. The two probably don't talk particularly in England. It's not always true, but it's more true than not. And then you've got the fact that this private purchase market, this sort of 278 billion of 50 plus spend, where's that going to go? How's that going to work? So they've kind of got this infinity model, and the idea being that the private market's on the right-hand side, and you know, private care, personal wellness, the thing you might buy from the local pharmacy or you know, your local gym or whatever that might be, and data and information will be sort of coming together and circulating round on that right-hand side. But at some point in many of our lives, we have a point where we do start to interact with the public healthcare system, which is then free at the point of need, etc., etc. So how does that data maybe go across from one to the other? If I've got a year's worth of blood pressure data, and then I go into my GP and he doesn't believe it, and I know people who've had that happen until they actually took their blood pressure monitor and said, look, it does exactly the same as yours and gives the same number. Will you believe my number now? And they have a discussion, and various people come to various agreements. Obviously there's places that are a bit more forward thinking across the UK. But how does that data maybe go from one field to the other and actually back? And it's not easy, but it's actually about information flows. And what we're trying to do with industry and the public and private sector is, in its widest sense, is think about what those flows might be. So how does this all fit together? Preventative Technology Grant, I'm not going to go into that in detail, but that was a sort of a few years ago now, which then went through to the whole system demonstrator, trying to break down the point where people say, well, there's no evidence, don't believe it, might actually disconnect people from society. We don't know it's going to have any benefit. So Department of Health ran the world's largest randomised controlled trial, 34 million pounds, 3 sites, about just over 6,000 people, looking at the benefit of telecare and telehealth. At the same time, we launched our assisted living innovation platform, and one of the things Tim Ellis said at the time, he said, well, if you could just make it better and cheaper, we'd like that. So rather than an average install cost of about £2,000, how do you make that better and cheaper? How do we make it more desirable as well, is what we were interested in. Dallas I've mentioned, which was our way of pulling all of that together, and then the other bit of the jigsaw then is 3 Million Lives, which is trying to take then some of the outputs from WSD. It's not just trying to say, right, we're going to now mainstream it completely and this is how you're going to do it in a diktat from Whitehall. It's actually trying to work in a more sort of partnership-based model, and I'll mention a bit more about that as we go about now. So whole system demonstrator, 3 sites, Cornwall, Newham, Kent, and they were looking not just at individuals, but they were actually, I'm going to get this wrong now, so people in the audience can help me, but they weren't looking particularly at dementia, but heart and lung disease, COPD, heart failure, so sort of CHF, and also diabetes were the main 3. People who had dementia weren't excluded from the trial explicitly, but they also weren't the sort of focus of it. How can you make their lives better? How could you maybe start to embed some of this telehealth data, this data sharing across the public sector? Is there clinical effectiveness for that? How might those flows work? And what does it do in terms of cost and quality of life? People were always worried about, if you start to have a remote connection and maybe being at home, does that actually disconnect you from your health service or your society? The 3 Million Lives bit that goes on from that, and I'm going to flick back and forth between WSD and whole system demonstrator. If I say WSD, I mean whole system demonstrator, and 3 Million Lives. I'm going to flick back and forth between the two. So 3 Million Lives is now looking at how do you actually start to take some of those results, take the learnings, and start to roll out telecare and telehealth to actually reach 3 million people over the next 5 years. If you look at it at the moment, UK and Mike Clark's normally the best at sort of keeping these numbers in his head. He normally refers to about 1.6, 1.7 million telecare users in the UK. It's a good thing, actually, a big number. We're right up there across Europe. In fact, I saw a study was showing that we were number 1. However, telehealth users, about 5,000, you know? So we're kind of a bit of a difference of scale there. And what they're trying to do then with 3 Million Lives is say, well, normally we've been finding that about 20% of the people get a clinical benefit. Long-term conditions, about sort of 15, growing to about 17, 18 million people over the sort of next few years. So 20% of 15 million people, it's about 3 million. So how do you actually do that? What they found from the whole system demonstrator in those 3 sites is that mortality, particularly for people with COPD actually, reduced by 45%. So they can actually show from this trial that 160 people didn't die because they had the intervention. So regardless of all the other stuff about saving money, there are actually people that are alive and on this planet today who wouldn't have been without this trial. They were also finding emergency admissions down by 20%, A&E visits 15%, I don't quite see what the two are, but there you go. Bed days down by 14%, elective admissions down by 14%. Cost savings, I think, were about 8%, I think, if you look at the detailed numbers. And at the back of this pack, there is actually the detailed number from the studies, so you can see that. So they were basically showing now an overall saving of about £180 per head. Some clinicians are actually challenging that, saying, well, actually, that's a saving, but that's not enough for us to be interested to change our service and our system. So what 3 Million Lives is trying to do is work with industry, and it's a concordat between Department of Health, with the sort of big industry players, with some SMEs, also with the trade associations. So you've got Medilink in there, you've got ABPI, you've got the Telecare Services Association, and they're kind of trying to say, well, how can we roll this out for benefit for everyone? We've also joined because we see it as a way of using Dallas as action learning to actually refer into how you might do things different. But you know, patient satisfaction is very high, age is no barrier, and they did find, I'm not going to go through all this in detail, but you see, patients on the whole like it, and it did also, in their phrase, bust the myth of lower quality of life as a result of isolation. So that bit that people were worried about technology actually disconnecting you from society, they've actually shown that didn't happen and in fact could increase connectivity. So the 3 Million Lives work going forward is not a traditional campaign. It's not Whitehall saying, right, you're going to do this many in this region or whatever that might be. Also recognising that Department of Health obviously has got an England remit. We as Technology Strategy Board, we're interested in the entire UK, so that's why we also work with Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. But they do recognise it's about transformational change, trying to do something different, trying to do something in a better way with the person at the centre, and then thinking about the technology and the service wrapper that's needed beyond that. And then trying to use government as a catalyst for that, but not through central dictate. So if I look to the future, and this is the bit where I will hopefully meet my remit, and I can be told if I'm wrong, innovation vouchers. Sue Dunkerton's on the Health Tech and Medicines Knowledge Transfer Network site, Knowledge Transfer Network desk out the front, and I did see that you had innovation voucher sort of leaflet, so if you want the leaflet, you can get that out the front. Innovation vouchers, for those of you who don't know, they're a way of trying to get businesses working with new knowledge-based partners. So it's not about sort of having the same relationship or doing another project with a university. It's about maybe doing a project with a university that you've never touched before. And it's about ideas for new or improved products, processes and services, using design to maybe take that forward and trying to think about your intellectual property. It's going to open in a few weeks. So 2 million is going to be available. This, to start with, it's in specific sectors. The reason I was asked to mention about it is that there's this built environment one there, which has got specifically 450,000. And I know that Richard and David, with some of the work they've been doing, they've been trying to look at how does maybe the built environment meet the assisted living domain through smart homes, for example. So the voucher's £5,000, so it's not, you know, you're not going to change the world necessarily, but it's that bit where you can maybe try and do something a bit different and look at something you didn't want to do. As I said, opens on 24th September, closes on 24th of October. So in terms of the people who could provide that, universities, the Catapult Centres that we're just starting to get going across the country, research and technology organisations. So there's a range of providers. There's more information on the website. You can get it from the flyer. You can also go to this link, and that will take you through to the latest information on the competition. Portal goes live on the 24th September. The one health warning I'll give you with this is we're expecting high demand. And because it's £5,000, we don't want to spend so much money assessing it that it's actually costs more to assess it than to actually give you the £5,000. So what we're actually going to look at is, are you in scope or not? So there's going to be a decision on whether your idea is in scope, so agri-food space or the built environment. If you are in scope, it then becomes a bit of a lottery, literally. So rather than sort of trying to work out, is this one better than that one, it's like, it's in scope, looks like a good idea, we're going to randomly pick whatever number it is, and those will be the ones that get funded. So that's purely because we're expecting high demand, and we've got quite a bit to go through. If you're trying to do something a bit more targeted, and you want something that is really expertly assessed, a bit bigger, there's also something called the Biomedical Catalyst. There's 3 levels of grant available for that. You've got feasibility. You can do up to 12-month project. It's up to £150,000. It's a 75% funding rate. As I said, we are a funding body, so this is where some of our funding comes from into this space. As I said, we're more than that, but I wanted to share these funding schemes with you. There's also an early stage one, which is then up to 3 years, about £2.4 million, also at 75%. Then there's also late stage, which is also £2.4 million, up to at a 50% grant rate. And that can be single company, or it could be a collaboration. You know, if you don't know how to form that collaboration, or you have the sort of partners that you think you know you'd like to reach, but you haven't managed to connect them yet, talk to me, talk to Sue Dunkerton, because we can bring you into the knowledge transfer network if you're not already, and obviously CETA will help you make those links as well. 3 chances to apply this year. The first one's closed, and that's now through into assessment. Next one's 31st of October, and then in next year, so still this financial year though, there's one at the end of February. I would suggest don't rush this to hit a deadline. Do something and make it right to give yourself the best chance of success. So I wouldn't necessarily go away from here and go, oh, I've got like 6 weeks to get an application together. Maybe you want to think of the next one, but there's more information available via that link. There's also SMART, which is a funding scheme we run for SMEs only. It's proof of market there, 25k, so should you do something in a market you've not done before, an idea you've got but you don't know where to use it or whether it will actually be possible. Proof of concept, 18 months, £100,000, 60%, or prototype development, actually taking that concept through into the market, and the funding rate goes down to sort of 35 or 45%, but the amount of money goes up to 250. Again, a link there to the more information about the competition. Again, it's open through the year. You can see that the next deadline there is 27th September. Again, I'd probably suggest, wouldn't worry about that one if you're looking at this for the first time, but maybe the November one. And all of these are competitively assessed, expertly assessed remotely, and they are looking this time at scope and the ability to deliver. It's just the innovation vouchers that have that sort of more lottery-based approach. Stay connected. We have the knowledge transfer network outside. Again, you can click on that link and it will take you through to join our assisted living innovation platform special interest group. Alternatively, failing that, there's always me. I'll try and help if I can. My email's there, my phone number's there, and you can even follow me on Twitter. Thank you.